All right, well, happy Saturday, Central Georgia. It's meteorologist Ansley Parker. We just got the 11 a.m. update from the National Hurricane Center about oh my goodness, it's Hurricane Erin now. I keep saying Tropical Storm Erin, about Hurricane Erin this morning. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the differences with the 11 a.m. update. And also, if this is your first time kind of waking up, tuning in to everything going on with Erin, we had a lot of changes from last night to this morning. In fact, we are now sitting at Category 4 status, and that's a big change from yesterday. So there's a lot of intensification that's been happening this morning. I'm going to kind of explain what's been going on with the system and then what the changes are with the 11 a.m. update. So let's go ahead and jump into it here. I'll start with kind of showing you what it looks like on infrared satellite there. So there is a look at Hurricane Erin. Pretty impressive looking now. You can kind of really tell that it's gotten itself together as not only a hurricane, but as a major hurricane. You can see the well-defined eye there just to the north of the Leeward Islands, and this thing is kind of continuing now, making a westerly track. So that is a difference here with this 11 a.m. update. It's now making sort of a westerly push. I'll kind of show you a little bit more what that means with this kind of tropical outlook here where we can include the cone. So starting to move a little bit more directly to the west. For the past couple of updates, we've been seeing a west-northwesterly direction, so that is a little bit of a change. Not too much to worry about, however, especially for kind of the Leeward Islands here. This will make a return to the west-northwest, as some of this intensification seems to have pushed it a little bit further in that direction. Remember, we are at Category 4 status now. As of last night, we were still at Category 2. So what happened this morning? Rapid intensification through the early morning hours this morning, kind of between 2 to about 5 a.m. is when we saw the main changes with this system. We were at Category 2 status. The National Hurricane Center with the 5 a.m. update jumped this up to Category 3 status, which is major hurricane. At around 5:50 a.m., they got some more data from the hurricane hunters who sent a flight into the system. Then they were able to go ahead and say, okay, you know what, with the data that we've seen and with the changes that we're continuing to see in the whole system, we're going to go ahead and bump it up to Category 4 status. So that is where we sit now. That was the most that we were talking about this morning. With the 11 a.m. update, there is another change that you can probably already see on there as well. Now, as of 11 a.m. this morning, Erin is expected to reach Category 5 status, so maximum strength before dropping back down to a Category 4 storm. So that's pretty impressive. The good news with this is that we're kind of expecting that to happen throughout the day today. It's sort of a brief window that it's going to maintain Category 5 status. It's definitely strengthening very quickly, and that's pretty impressive, especially for the first hurricane that we have so far this year to reach Category 5 status. But the intensification here is all going to happen within the next 12 hours. So we'll likely see this become a Category 5 storm here probably by the end of the day today, if not sooner than that, potentially as early as the 2 p.m. or the 5 p.m. advisory. I'm going to go ahead and venture and say 5 p.m. They tend to make these major changes with the 11, the 5, those kind of updates. So we'll kind of see when that exactly happens, but you'll see by the time we're talking about Sunday, we may already be dropping back down to Category 4 status. So not really expected to maintain that strength super long and not expected to have a major direct land impact at Category 5 status. Definitely probably some hurricane watches. I'll have to check on that here in just a minute. We just got this update, so I'm kind of tracking the data right as I have it here on the stream. But we did have tropical storm watches in this region from about the northern Leeward Islands all the way into Puerto Rico. I know parts of the Virgin Islands were also paying attention to flooding potential. I'll need to see if the watches and warnings have potentially changed with that, especially with this westerly direction here. Something that hasn't changed, which I'll talk more about here in a minute, is that this thing is continuing to steer away from the U.S., so good news with that. But yes, expected to be Category 5. By the time we hit the end of the weekend, early work week, all this thing is going to do is continue to lose strength. So it's not going to jump back up to a 5 after this. It peaks and then we go downhill from there. So it'll be at Category 4 status by the end of the weekend. And then by the time we're talking about the early work week, that detensification inside of the system is actually going to result in the turning of the system overall. So what's going to happen here is the western wall of the hurricane is going to start to break down a little bit. As it does that, that is going to help the system move its way towards the north. Now, this is where the disagreement in the models really still lies. It's really about when and exactly where that northerly turn is going to take place. Some small indiscrepancies in the models about that, but overall they all say it will happen. It's just hard to say exactly when and exactly what longitude and latitude that's going to happen at. So we'll kind of see that happen here in the early work week. Again, now it will kind of maintain Category 4 strength for a little bit longer than was originally anticipated, probably due to how strong it's expected to be throughout the day today. But by the time we're talking about the midweek in the upcoming week, that is when this thing will be making its way out towards the Atlantic. We're still keeping an eye on Bermuda here. You'll notice they're partially included in the cone now, so there's still some uncertainty about the end of this forecast here, mainly for Bermuda. But the one thing that hasn't changed over the last few days is that this thing continues to steer away from the eastern coast of the United States. So that is good news, but it's still a system that we'll be paying attention to. Still impressive nonetheless. And I'll kind of play it out for you on the spaghetti models here so you can see my thinking. Again, worst case scenario is some of these outlying models. One of these ones that tries to take it a little bit closer to the eastern coast of the U.S., even as close as they get, we're still on the western side of the storm, so not even on the dirty side of this storm. Overall, the impacts from this are not going to have direct land impacts on the U.S. I think we can basically say that with almost 100% certainty at this moment. Unless something drastic changes, this is the trend that the models have been taking for several days in a row now. It will probably cause some increased surf and rip currents along the eastern U.S. coast, but even when we flip it over to the European spaghetti models, the agreement here of this just not impacting the U.S. at all is definitely there. Obviously, still some uncertainty about how far left or right this thing will turn about Bermuda out here and the land impacts on there. But for the U.S., I think we're looking pretty locked in place of this thing not impacting us. So definitely a strong storm, one that we'll be paying attention to. But overall, even when we play this out on the GFS and the Euro, still not something that we're necessarily expecting to see impacts from, aside from maybe some increased moisture by the end of the week. So that's kind of the 11 a.m. update here with the National Hurricane Center. That is the thinking. But that system is not alone out there. We also are still paying attention to other areas in the tropics, one of those being kind of just off the coast of the eastern U.S. There's a lot of activity happening in this region over the last couple of days. So what you're looking at here is a broad area of low pressure producing a couple of disorganized showers and thunderstorms. This has got a low chance of development overall. If you've kind of been paying attention to potential areas of development for the last few weeks or so when we've been talking about them on the air, on the stream, etc., there's been this trend of there's these low pressure systems that are sitting over the Gulf Stream, and the Gulf Stream is some really warm water, so it could potentially support tropical development of that area. But the trend also with these is that these areas tend to drift away from the Gulf Stream before too many days, and then that squashes their chances of overall development. This is the exact same thing. You'll see 10% chance of development overall. All that means is that this really needs to happen by Monday, or it's not going to happen at all. So I really don't think that this system shows a lot of promise here over the next couple of days. It's something that the National Hurricane Center is watching, but overall, I don't think it's going to be the next named storm of the season. If it were, for some reason, to become that, just to kind of check in with where we stand for the 2025 season. Again, we just took Erin off the list. That was our first hurricane of the season. The next name to grab would be the F name on the list, which would be Ferdinand. And just talking about the climatology of this whole thing and kind of where we stand in terms of hurricane season as of right now, this is when we tend to see a pretty good uptick in activity. The peak of the season, a little less than a month away, so we're not too far from probably seeing a good bit of activity out in the tropics at all times. Peak of the season is right around September 10th. On average, our first hurricane happens around August 11th, so just a month before the peak. That's kind of the season that we're in right now. Our hurricane was a little bit later than average, but not too far off. So we kind of stand right around the average for this time of year in terms of our expected activity. A lot of activity will happen between August and October. You'll hear a lot about the tropics, especially for the next couple of weeks. When we start talking about September, that is probably when this is going to enter the conversation the most, although nothing promising out there right now showing signs of potential development. So because I have you here, let's talk a little bit more about the weather across central Georgia for the rest of the weekend as well. Just kind of an update to the forecast, especially because yesterday when we were talking about the forecast, I was really hoping that the models were going to back off the rain chances for today. I think that there's a pretty good shot at catching a shower or storm today. Hopefully not a total wash of your day, but I do think that there's going to be some rain out there. So let's talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute. Not the case right now. There's blue skies in all the sky cams this morning. Definitely a good start to the day. We had some clouds early this morning. So if you were up 6, 7 a.m., that's when there was a lot of cloud cover. That's since moved out, and now we're looking at some clear skies all across the area. So much better out there. But like I said, there's probably going to be a chance for some afternoon rain later today. A couple of showers, maybe a few embedded thunderstorms as well. And it's going to be another hot and muggy day. The high today is going to climb into the low 90s. And when you factor in the humidity, it's going to feel a little bit worse than that. So here's how the numbers stand right now this morning. Upper 70s, low to mid 80s in a couple of the warmer spots here. Lots of humidity. This has not changed one bit in a while, and our weather pattern is pretty locked in here for the next 7 days or so. So I think it's going to be a pretty humid couple of days for a while here, and you can see that already has the feels like numbers into the 90s in most spots. It won't be long before we have our first triple-digit number on there either. So in terms of the satellite and radar, not a lot out there to kind of cool us off at the moment. Not a lot in the southeast at all. Behind me, you can see the area of low pressure producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms off the coast of North Carolina. Elsewhere, it's fairly quiet here. There's not a ton going on. So definitely not a ton going on in our area. Like I said, this morning we had some clouds. What you see here in green is just some scatter on the radar. That's not rain. So it was a little bit of a cloudy start, but as we've headed into kind of the mid-morning here, things have died down and we have clear blue skies outside this afternoon. So now that I have a new model run, this is the first time I'm seeing this as well as you, so let's check it out together. Now, what I was saying this morning is that I was hoping that the graph model was going to back off on the coverage of some of these afternoon showers and thunderstorms. I will say this model actually looks like it has a bit. So maybe some slightly less coverage. Either way, I think you want to be prepared that you could catch a shower or storm later today. Best case scenario, you don't, and you're able to enjoy your outdoor plans without any interruption. Worst case scenario, you do end up catching one. Either way, I don't think it will totally wash out the rest of the day. I think there's a chance of rain, and I think you may catch a shower or storm in the late afternoon and the early evening, similar to most summertime days here in central Georgia. So you can see this is kind of what I was seeing this morning. Better coverage of some of those showers and storms. This model backs it off a little bit, so that would be kind of best case scenario here. Hopefully, that's the way things go. I will say that the HUR model, which you hear us talk about from time to time, a different model than this one, also has it backed off just a little bit. So I would be inclined to believe maybe there's slightly less coverage out there than they were showing yesterday and this morning. That would certainly be ideal, but you still could catch a shower or storm today. What hasn't changed is Sunday. Sunday is looking pretty consistent. This is going to be one of the drier days on the 7-day forecast. There is a rain chance there, but it's more of teeny tiny isolated showers and storms. Maybe 2 or 3 popping up in our area through the afternoon and evening, and otherwise everybody should stay dry for Saturday. Same kind of thing for Monday. Sunday and Monday, the National Weather Service is noting, are 2 of the driest days that we have on the forecast. I think that will carry us through about Wednesday of the upcoming week. Wednesday's when the higher rain chances look like they start to return. Not a ton higher, but a better chance, kind of like today, of catching a scattered shower or a storm. That'll be the story through the second half of the upcoming work week, so probably sticking with us through about the upcoming weekend. In terms of numbers, the actual numbers aren't going to be terrible. We saw a high yesterday of 95 degrees, slightly above average for this time of year. I think we're going to hover somewhere between above and below average over the next couple of days. The real kicker is going to be the humidity through the next few days. You can see we don't really lose much of it until we hit kind of maybe early next week. We could see a little bit of a dip in the humidity, but overall through the weekend and likely through the early work week next week, things are going to feel really, really humid. In terms of the actual numbers, somewhere around normal for this time of year. Again, probably not super, super cool. Definitely not the 80s that we saw the other week, but probably not quite as bad as we saw a few weeks ago. Not near the 100s. We're probably sticking closer to the low 90s, maybe even mid 90s for a couple of days. You can see that here on the 7 days. I've been saying this over the last few days, but the 7-day is fairly similar. Every single day, there's not really a huge change. The temperatures are going to be in the low to maybe mid 90s on some of the warmer days. Rain chances, like you see, teetering between 20 and 30. I went with 60 today. With what I see out there on the models, I would feel comfortable dropping that to 40. I don't like to do 50, so I try to land somewhere in between there. 40 is probably what I would have gone with had I had this model run before the showtime. It does seem like the coverage on some of those is looking to be slightly lower. I still think overall when you think about the rest of the afternoon, just think there's a chance to catch a shower or a storm, and that will really be the main thing that you need to know. For the rest of the week, teetering between 20 and 30, that's really just saying, okay, a couple of pop-up showers and storms across the area, but overall, it's not going to be a washout on any day. You may just want to have your rain jacket or your umbrella in your car just to cover your bases. Temperatures hardly move. We're in the low to mid 90s. With the heat index, it'll be feeling a little bit warmer than that. So overall, fairly similar numbers, fairly similar rain chances. It's not going to be much of a change through the weekend and the upcoming work week. The only thing that we're really going to be talking about aside from our specific weather here is the tropics in the coming week. Remember, we are approaching the peak of the season as we get closer to September, and we have our first hurricane of the season out there expected to be at Category 5 strength by the end of today. Still no impacts on the mainland in the U.S. here. It's just something that we're going to want to pay attention to, and then we're going to want to keep our eye on any areas of potential development that pop up over the next couple of weeks or so. So it's just your time to be tuned in to the forecast here as we head towards the peak of hurricane season. There will be plenty more updates for you to find throughout the day today. Meteorologist David Guerrero is going to be in later this afternoon. He's going to be doing updates as we have them. Right now, the National Hurricane Center is updating their information every 3 hours. So we are updating our information every 3 hours as well. You can find that all on 13wmaz.com. And meteorologist David Guerrero will be doing live streams similar to what I'm doing right now, right here on 13 WMAZ+. If you want to access the track, the cones, the spaghetti models, what it looks like on satellite, you can also do that right here where you are on our 24/7 radar stream. That is on 13 WMAZ+. That information is available 24/7, hence the name. So you can find all that information there. And again, we will be here all day and all weekend updating you on the latest with Hurricane Erin. So with all that, I hope you have a safe Saturday and enjoy your time. Hopefully you're able to get outside and duck and dodge some of the rain.